This is actually insane. Did you know that for about 30 years, the German government sent kids in foster care to go live with PDF files because the government felt that PDF files would be the most loving caregivers a child could have? This right here is the man behind it all, Helmut Kentler. With the support of the Berlin Senate, the Kentler experiment put 13 to 15-year-old kids in the homes of single PDF file fathers. Kentler believed that PDF files could make acceptable foster parents and that any certain type of contact would be relatively harmless if not forced. Before we go any further, I should point out it's not exactly rare for a government to have experimented on kids in foster care or orphans or even adopted children throughout the course of history. There are the Indian boarding schools from the US and Canada, the Monster Study, the American government used foster kids as test subjects for HIV drugs, and the same thing happened in the United Kingdom, the Little Danes experiment in Denmark, Australia has its own recorded history of experimenting on these vulnerable kids. And even Ivan Pavlov, the Pavlov's dog guy, ran shady experiments on orphans. But I think it's safe to say Kentler's experiments were by far the worst of them all. His assertion that PDF file men were suitable caregivers because they would take more intensive care of the children led to decades of abuses of minors in Germany. Kentler called the cohabitation between quote-unquote problem children and PDF file men a win-win because in his eyes, the PDF files would look after the children with the utmost dedication, quote, because they are in love with them, smitten, and infatuated. The Berlin Senate Department for Youth and Family funded this experiment and created several foster homes with PDF file fathers. Somehow, Kentler was not alone in his views. In fact, many people apparently shared his views. A network of researchers, artists, educators, and priests formed who believed that this type of inappropriate contact with children was not abuse, but rather care. A well-known writer wrote an essay titled The Under 16s in which he celebrated physical love with minors. We don't know what Kentler's true motivations were or whether or not he was one of the creeps involved in all of this, although this specific detail makes it very difficult to believe he wasn't at least somewhat motivated by his own opportunity to participate. Kentler himself adopted 3 children and fostered at least one more, and if you believe his colleague, Kentler confided in his friend that he was abusing at least one of these children for years until that person ultimately took his own life. But don't worry everyone, because after about 30 years of experimenting on kids in foster care, Kentler finally changed his mind on PDF files having inappropriate contact with children and described it as a disorder. If only it took you, I don't know, less than 30 years to figure that out, man.